Hi, I'm Stuart. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Thanks for viewing my video. In this video, I'm going to give my reading wrap-up for the week of August 18th through August 24th. I completed 3 books this week, so I'm going to give reviews for them. I read parts of 2 other books. I'm going to talk briefly about them. I didn't get any new books, so there's nothing to talk about there. I'm going to talk briefly about the Wobble I'm working on, and then I'm going to talk about some music I've been listening to and maybe some other events that have been going on in my life. The first book I completed this week was The First Physical Culturists, Ancient Greek Athletics, Training and Competition by Dr. Alex Daulat. Before I give my review of the book, I'm going to give a brief biography of the author. This is actually a biography he provided himself, which is part of the introduction. My biography. I have over 30 years experience working in health and fitness. I am a sports science graduate and a UK chartered physiotherapist with qualifications as a sports coach, squash leaders, and a gym and Pilates instructor. I am currently specializing in musculoskeletal conditions with an interest in managing back pain. My research at the postgraduate level has looked at exercise therapy for managing chronic lower back pain. This has led to a professional doctorate in publications in the journal International Musculoskeletal Medicine. This was an internationally recognized and highly regarded peer-reviewed journal. My first published book, A History of Exercise Therapy from Ancient to Modern Times, was a rather ambitious attempt to cover the origins of some of the most popular forms of exercise used therapeutically in clinical practice, such as yoga and Pilates. This book looked at the history of exercise therapy and the medieval systems of ancient civilizations. I thought it's important to give his background to show that he's coming at this book as a professional with considerable knowledge about exercise training in the human body. This book gives details about how athletics and training were developed by the ancient Greeks. The author reviewed many sources. He didn't shy away from talking about differing views that were held by ancient Greek doctors and other experts. The ancient Greeks built gymnasiums for training. They had training specialists. The author compared the techniques of ancient Greek training to the techniques that are currently used. Many of the techniques that the ancient Greeks developed are similar to the techniques that are still used today. And some of the dietary approaches that the ancient Greeks used are similar to the dietary approaches that people use now. They championed the Mediterranean diet. Some of them championed a low-fat diet. Some championed going light on red meat. A diet primarily of fruits and vegetables. Some of the things that are still people champion now. The big reason for the training the ancient Greeks developed was ideals that they held for beauty of men, both facially and their physiques. They considered the ideal man had a good musculature, good development, but not overdeveloped. They were a big thing. It was their the development and display of the abdominal muscles were a big part of it. Statues that have been discovered from that period indicate what the ideal man was supposed to aspire to. Some of these showed a physique that the men wouldn't actually been able to achieve, but some appeared to show a physique that was achievable. A period of time where the Greek training methods and the ideals were espoused ended when the Roman Empire fell, and there was a long period where the information was kind of lost to history. But the author talks about how in the 18th and 19th centuries there was a renewed interest in the ancient Greek male physique and also the methods that were used to achieve them, and how that led to the current methods of training. and the physiques people try to aspire to, and also the training in athletics. I recommend this book most for those who have a great deal of knowledge about the musculoskeletal systems of people, and also have a great deal of knowledge about training methods. I think they'll get the most out of it because the author does give a lot of scientific details. If, like me, you're not one of those people, you still might get a lot out of it. You just have to try not to get bogged down into the scientific details where it goes pretty deep. I think the book is an impressive example of research and scholarship. I rated it 4 stars. Now I just want to read a short passage from the book so you can get an idea of the writing style. This is actually the beginning of Chapter 1. And Chapter 1 is titled The Beginnings of Exercise and Sporting Contests in the Ancient World. Sport from early history to the ancient Greeks. It was aristocrats in the societies of Sumer, Babylon, and Assyria who engaged in sports such as boxing, wrestling, and swimming. Physical fitness through exercise was important for early civilizations such as Assyria, Babylonia, Egypt, and Persia to improve physical performance in war and not for sport or health benefits. For example, the Persian Empire had a strict mandatory training program for boys from the age of 6. This program was aimed at improving strength and stamina to provide recruits for the army and not for sporting pursuits. Physical activity was less important for the rest of society, particularly as the empire became more affluent. Shepard, 2012. In Mesopotamia during the 3rd millennium BC, physical performances were staged at festivals as well as at court. These included military exercises, hunting, and supposedly feats of strength performed by Mesopotamian kings to demonstrate their prowess. Artwork shows that Mesopotamians were also familiar with wrestling and boxing. Kyle, 2015. The next book I completed was The Hidden Language of Cats, How They Have Us at Meow, by Sarah Brown. Before I give my review of the book, I just want to read a short author bio from the back of the book. Sarah Brown gained her PhD on the social behavior of neutered domestic cats while working at the Anthrozoology Institute at the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom. She has since worked as an independent cat behavior counselor, as a consultant for the cat toy industry, and has conducted research for and worked with several UK animal charities. She authored The Cat, A Natural and Cultural History, which has been published in 3 languages, co-wrote The Behavior of the Domestic Cat, 2nd edition, and contributed to The Domestic Cat, The Biology of Its Behavior, 3rd edition. Sarah lives in London with her family, her dog, Reggie, and her cats, Bootsy and Smudge. So essentially she has a PhD in cats, which I think is pretty cool, actually. The author uses her own research and experiences and the research of others to talk about how cats communicate. She talks about how cats have had to learn how to live with humans. Before cats started to interact with humans, they were solitary animals. They only came together to mate, and the mother cat would raise the kittens, but otherwise they live separately. So they've had to learn to live with humans, with other cats, with dogs, in households. Cats learn that purring works with humans. They don't actually purr off into each other. Many humans aren't actually great at understanding how cats are trying to communicate with them. I recommend this book for anyone who has a cat and would like to better understand how their cat is trying to communicate with them. I also recommend to anybody who likes cats, even if they don't have one, and would just like to understand cats better. It was quite an enjoyable read. There were some humorous parts of it. Now I'm going to read a short passage from the book so you can get an idea of the writing style. This is from the introduction, the beginning of the introduction. It was the late 1980s when, as a young scientist, I embarked on an exciting adventure. My mission was to study the behavior of domestic cats, starting with how those living in neutered groups interact with one another, and how cats communicate with people. More than 30 years and countless cats later, I'm still on that adventure. Turns out that studying cat behavior involves a delicate and sometimes challenging balance between rigorous science and unbridled delight at your subjects. In his 1911 book, Animal Intelligence, Edward Thorndike, one of the earliest pioneers of experimental psychology, referred rather disparagingly to the well-nigh universal tendencies in human nature to find the marvelous wherever it can. He felt that this habit inevitably led to somewhat biased judgment in both choosing what to study and interpreting the results. In other words, a serious animal behavior scientist should be as objective as possible, avoiding at all costs the temptation to sing the praises of their subjects. At the beginning of my doctoral degree, as I said about my research, I was desperately keen to discover new facts about cats. With Thorndike's words echoing in my mind, however, I knew my studies had to be carefully planned and analyzed to make their mark as proper science. I duly gathered my data, made my deductions, and gave my doctorate in a sensible scientific manner. And yet, from my very first day and the very first cats, I found myself marveling over and over at these enigmatic creatures, at their adaptability, ingenuity, and resilience. This book looks at how domestic cats, descended from solitary North African wildcats, have managed to set up home with devoted owners all over the world. In the USA alone, over 45 million households are now home to at least one cat. How did they do it? I realized I forgot to hold up the book too when I was talking about it, the review. So here's the book. Can't recall if I gave the rating, but I rated this book 4.5 stars. Quite an enjoyable read. The next book I completed was Funny Story by Emily Henry with Julia Whelan narrating. And as you can tell by the title, it's an audiobook. Before I give my review of the book, I'm going to give a brief author bio, which I got from the author's website. Emily Henry is the #1 New York Times and #1 Sunday Times best-selling author of Funny Story, Happy Place, Beach Lovers, People We Met on Vacation, and Beach Reads. She lives and writes in the American Midwest. Find her occasionally on Instagram at Emily Henry Writes. As I said, it's an audiobook, and I think the narrator does a fantastic job. Daphne's a librarian. She is working at a library in a Michigan town on the coast of Lake Michigan. She's engaged to Peter. They've been together for a few years. She lives at Peter's house. Although they live together, the house is totally in his name. At Peter's bachelor party, he and his longtime friend Petra realize they have feelings for each other. He comes home and tells Daphne that the wedding is off. She needs to be out of the house in a week, and then he goes off for that week. Daphne needs a place to live now because in a week she's going to have to leave the house. Petra's boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now actually, Miles, comes to the house, and Daphne asks Miles if she can live with him in his apartment, and the story goes from there. The developing relationship between Daphne and Miles is really well done. They have a lot to learn about themselves as well as each other. As with the other Emily Henry book I read, Happy Place, friendship is almost as important as romance. There's a great supporting cast in this book, and Henry does a great job describing the locations in this Michigan town, the beaches, the stores, the library, houses, etc. Her characters have a lot of depth. They have issues they have to work through. I recommend this book for anyone who wants to read a great romance, where the characters are flawed but endearing. They have a lot of issues to work through. And a book where friendships are almost as important as the romance. There are some moderately graphic, spicy scenes in this book. They aren't gratuitous or crude, but some people might object to them if you don't like spicy scenes. If you don't like spicy scenes, you might want to avoid this book, although, as I said, I don't find them at all objectionable. If you do enjoy audiobooks, I suggest the audiobook. Although if you do listen to the audiobook, I recommend you listen to it on normal speed. I think if you speed it up, you're going to miss a lot of the nuances. And as I said, the narrator does a great job. I rated this book 5 stars. The book did make me wonder a little bit, though, how much of an impact a narrator can have on a book. It seems to me that a really good narrator could certainly cause you to raise your view of a book a little bit, and a poor one cause you to lower it a bit. It's hard for me to quantify that, but I kind of think maybe like a great narrator, like in this book, say this, if I read it was 4 stars, maybe make me think it's 5 stars, or the reverse is true too. A poor narrator could make me think a 4-star book was a 3-star book. I kind of think with this book I probably would have thought it was a 5-star book anyway. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I did rate it 5 stars. But it just got me thinking that the narrator can have an effect, and that, I guess that's kind of an obvious, but it just makes me wonder like how much of an impact the narrator can have. I think make a poor book seem great, but I think it might, depending on the quality of the narrator, it might raise a book 1 star, maybe lower a book 1 star. I don't have any passage to read from the book because as it's an audiobook, I have nothing to read from. Next, I just want to talk briefly about the 2 books I read part of this week. The first is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I don't have too much left in the book. I might not complete it in time because it's due to return to the library through Libby tomorrow morning. And the reason I might not is that although it is a really good book, it does have some very disturbing parts of it that I'm not always in the right mood to read. So I think there's a good possibility that I'm going to have to renew the hold, and it might be a little while because it's a popular book. My library did recently get another couple of copies of it, so that's why my hold came through. But it was a 40-week hold before that. But it is a really good book, very well written. It's just there's some topics that are difficult for me in it. The second book I read part of is Star Trek: The Original Series, The Context of Principles by Greg Cox. This is a book that I read a while back and I'm getting back to reading. And I just want to talk about a few reading events that I'm going to try to re-emphasize because I haven't, frankly, done very well on them. And the Star Trek book is part of the first one, and that is Book Trek 2024, Star Trek Summer Readathon. I really haven't done anything at all really on that until reading part of that book yesterday. I do want to complete it. I won't probably be able to complete what I committed to do within the summer because the summer is now less than a month left. But I do want in the essentially third of the year left to read the books that I committed to reading for that. The second is Historathon 2024. That one I'm behind too, and I first want to read my second quarter book, which I haven't started at all, and then start reading the third quarter book. That's another one I do want to read the books I committed to read. I have to emphasize that a little more because the year is getting along. And the third is one that I'm doing myself, and that's reading books from 6 countries for the first time. I've only read from one of the countries, Mexico, and I do want to read from the other 5. So that's another one I'm going to try to emphasize in the remainder of the year. I'm not going to overly put pressure on myself, but just going to like try to work on them, and by the end of the year I hope I succeed in the challenges I established. One I'm sure I'm not going to succeed on is I established a challenge to read 40 of my physical books, and I've only got a few so far, so I don't think that one's going to be achieved. But I'm not putting pressure on myself for that one. Next, I'm just going to talk briefly about the Wobble I'm working on. It's Powderpuff Girls Blossom. I have gotten a fair ways in the body. There's 3 color changes which are challenging, but it's going pretty well. I would expect that I would have this one completed by my next weekly wrap-up. This is the 11th one I'm doing, and I'm still enjoying doing the wobbles greatly. I didn't realize until recently that I had a creative impulse, and things like the wobbles satisfy that impulse. Next, I just want to talk about a little bit about the music I've been listening to. The first CD I want to talk about is This Is How Tomorrow Moves by B. Batterby, and this is the CD. I meant to talk about this last week, and I forgot to do so. She's an artist I've been following for a little while, and I saw leading up to this on her Instagram that she was interviewed by Elton John in his podcast, and he was highly complimentary of her. And then when I was in Target a week and a half or so back, I saw this album on vinyl, which I was pleasantly surprised. It showed her profile had risen. And then she posted that she had the #1 album in the UK, which made me quite happy. It's a quite good album. She's a singer, songwriter, guitarist, and the songs are kind of sensitive lyrics, kind of understated, but quite good. The other 2 artists I listened to a fair amount this week were the Bangles and Billy Joel, and those are because of the music series I'm doing as a sideline to my normal book series. And the most recent one, music I listened to and concerts I went to in the 1980s, part 1. Both artists were prominently mentioned in that video. I do play the Bangles a fair amount, just in the normal course of things, but I hadn't played Billy Joel for a while, so it brought back some good memories. Just want to say, too, thanks for anyone who watched that video. I know that an hour-long video is a big ask of people, and I'm not sure who watched the whole hour, but I know it's a big ask, so just that I kept thinking of more and more artists when I was doing it, and it kept getting longer and longer. There's actually some more footage to which I didn't use because I was getting tired of editing it, but thanks to all who watched that video and commented on it, liked it, whatever. The next one is going to be a part 2 of the 1980s. It's going to be my heavy music video, which is mainly going to be heavy metal. It's going to talk about the event that caused me to become a heavy metal fan and other bands I like going forward and stuff like that. So don't really have a commitment for when I'm going to do that one, but hopefully in the next week or 2 I'll be able to do that one and publish it. And I don't expect it's going to be as long as the first one. I'm going to try to make those videos shorter in the future because, as I said, an hour is a great deal to ask for a person to watch. And it might turn off a person from even watching it at all. Other than that, I did hit 100 subscribers and appreciate everyone who subscribed. I'm hesitant to mention things because sometimes people unsubscribe, so it could back down, but I'm currently at 101, so thank you to everyone who subscribed. When I started talking about books, I had 9, so that is 92 more than that, so thank you. I'd be interested in how your week went, book-wise or music-wise also. Books you're reading, musicians you're listening to, anyone of either you recommend. If you'd like to let me know, please reply in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please subscribe. Please hit the bell to get notified when I upload future videos. I hope you have a wonderful reading week, and I hope you have a wonderful week in general.